Shonda. This is Boss Moves. Hi, I'm Jenny, and you to introduce yourself.
So my name is Shonda Patterson, and I'm the lead financial consultant at Patterson and Associates Financial Group.
So you're a financial advisor, and you've been doing this for a while. Tell me how long you've been in the financial realm.
So it's been 14 years, actually. I
Wow.
started part-time. I used to be a school teacher. So I taught I was a middle school teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. And I did that for 10 years. So I worked part-time and taught at the same time. But I've been licensed in total for 14 years.
Wow. That's exciting. I mean, and actually that's really cool because I think we have a lot of people who are wanting to figure out how to transition their careers. And you took a bold move and kind of doubled up for a while and then took a leap. I get that. I've been there. So I'm just going to ask you some quick questions. And, we'll start with some of the basics. As a teacher, what county did you work in, or what state? It was in Maryland?
It was in Maryland and Baltimore City, which
Okay.
is an urban community in Maryland.
Excellent. And did you have a teaching degree or some other degree and got into teaching?
No, I always wanted to be a teacher. So I have a bachelor's in elementary education and a master's in special education. So I did go to school for teaching.
Okay. So, and that's interesting. We'll get back to that. Always wanted to be a teacher thing. And what college did you attend?
So for undergrad, I went to Goucher College in Maryland for a few years, and then I transferred to Morgan State University, where I graduated magna cum laude, by the way, with
Congratulations.
a degree in elementary education. And then I went to Loyola University of Maryland for my master's in special education.
Oh, awesome. So you've really done it, all the way through to master's, and that's great. I know with most teachers, they require it, but they don't always require it right up front. So that's great. As far as teaching, what made you feel like you always wanted to do it? Like what put that into your mind?
So as a youth in Baltimore, I, at times did not have what I would say the ideal upbringing. And I found that the support of the teachers at school, as well as some of the members of the community, were really vital in helping me to really progress and succeed. And I always wanted to give that back to others, because I know that if it wasn't for some of the support that I received outside of my family, that I would not have been able to achieve the level of success that we've been able to achieve so far. So it's just about giving back and wanting to help those who may have or may be experiencing some of the things that I experienced as a child.
That's really powerful. I think, there's some gravity in that, because I had teachers that helped me stay forward when I probably wouldn't have. So I appreciate that. Sorry, I don't know why that made me emotional. But I do think that there was a cause there for you, a purpose. Correct?
Absolutely.
I love that.
And still is.
Still? So do you still get involved?
Well, I do a lot of free financial literacy stuff for kids. I've done seminars for Girl Scouts. I did the Marion Berrien Youth Summer Work Program. I did financial literacy classes on Fridays for Finance Fridays for their youth. I've done seminars at, sometimes I'll pair with real estate agents who are looking for first-time home buyers, and will encourage them to bring their kids along so I can teach the kids about financial literacy and things like that while their parents are in those seminars and workshops. So anytime I have an opportunity to engage with kids and help them to understand money, I definitely take advantage of that.
I love that. That's really great. And I think actually it's a huge need that I wish more people had access to, kids and adults really, to understand their finances and how to position themselves better. So that's great. And with that in mind, that kind of segues us. You took a big leap. You went from this teaching role into financial advisor role and kind of bridge the gap there. Tell me what inspired you to pursue that and a little bit about that journey.
Well, I have to say, first and foremost, it wasn't an easy journey because I spent my entire life wanting to be a teacher. So, finance for me was about learning so that I could improve my own financial literacy and improve my own personal financial situation. And as I got more involved, I started to really understand the need that existed not only in the community but in my own family. And it dove me into finance more just because, again, of that desire to want to help other people. And I still had the desire to teach kids and remain in the and remain in the classroom as well. So also it's a scary thing, if you're used to having a certain salary come in, if you're used to the safety and security of your position, then taking a leap where it's going to be a complete change can also be really uncertain and sometimes scary. So I think working part-time for me solidified the fact that I was able to earn income part-time and that it was consistent, and it gave me more faith when I was able to take the leap. I think faith is also a big part of that, having faith, and then also having a great support system. I have an amazing husband who is very supportive in my endeavors, and so that was also helpful. But I think knowing that I could make money, so I didn't just dive out without any relevance, any knowledge of what it could be like. I had already worked in the industry for a while. So having money saved as well, and then having a support system were all things that helped that transition.
Yes, and tell me, with the financial advisor role, are there certifications that you have? Are there courses that you take and continuing education, things like that?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. But yes, so when you're in finance, you're going to get multiple licenses, certifications in different areas of finance. I am licensed in life insurance licensing. Also have multiple certifications in debt elimination and budgeting strategies, things like that. Also have investments licenses to help people invest their money, not just in the state of Maryland, but in any state as well. And there's also always continuing education for investing. You take continuing education every year. On the life insurance side, you do continuing education every 2 years. But I'm always reading books, always, reading articles, brushing up on the industry daily, because I want to make sure that I'm well informed so that I can do a great job for the clients that we serve.
Very cool. Now, when you first were getting into this and you're first taking these courses, and this is relatively new to you, how intimidating was that? Was it not intimidating? Was it kind of, describe how you felt at that time when you're just taking that leap?
I guess I didn't think it wasn't as intimidating, but it could have also been because at the time I was in school for my master's. So if you're comparing
Oh,
master's coursework to getting a certification, it wasn't the same. Also, to be a teacher, you have to get licensed and certified. So I was very familiar with licensing to get professional licenses, because in order to be a teacher, you have to go through a licensing process and get professionally licensed. So this wasn't an unknown area to me. Now, the field itself was pretty uncharted territory, but the concept of studying material to get licensed wasn't foreign.
yeah, I definitely feel that if you have the foundation, that if I approach this thing, I do the work and study and figure out the path forward, and you just go in a direction, I definitely think that that result can occur and that you can achieve literally anything if you put your mind to it.
Absolutely.
In this case, it sounds like that's what you did. So
Yeah.
that's really awesome. And what reasons did you go to full-time financial advising? What was that moment like for you in that decision?
It was hard. It was hard. I to say that I miss the students that I teach would be in the beginning it was immense. It was like, oh my gosh, I miss my kids because they were like my kids. But one of the reasons I decided to transition into a different career path was some of it was had to do with the fact that I believe that you're a part of the problem or a part of the solution. And as a teacher, sometimes I felt that I was a part of the problem because ultimately I don't feel that in some cases our schools are doing a great job of educating our students and preparing them for the life that lies ahead. And as a teacher, your hands are kind of tied. You kind of just do what you're told. But it used to really hurt me to the core that I felt like I wasn't doing what I became a teacher to do. And that was a really big thing for me. The second thing was I actually had a child of my own. And I wanted to be able to be the parent that could be at everything. I didn't want to send my child to daycare. I didn't want to have to rely on nannies and other people to take care of my child. And each person has their own path. So I'm not doubting anyone that that's what they do. I'm just speaking for myself. But I wanted to, again, because of my upbringing and maybe the absence of some of that, I wanted to be able to be there. And with working in finance and having the flexibility of being able to do those things, that was one of the biggest deciding factors for us as well as a family, was being able to be there for our children.
And that's a very common thing. Uh, Career, when you're young and you're just sort of imagining your future, it's everything. And this is, you imagine having a family and you imagine having all these things, but you don't think about how you're really going to feel when that moment really comes that you have this baby and you have to decide, do I leave this baby with someone else? And maybe you have someone you really trust and a career you really love, and that's a decision that you can make. And then I'm like you. I was like, I know I want to be home with my kids, and how do I make my career work for me? And, as I've been going down this path, I've been discovering more and more women made this decision like you did to create some flexibility in their life and take somewhat of a non-traditional path in order to be able to be both and be both successfully. And it sounds like you've done that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So with that said, you made that decision, you took that leap, and how's it gone since?
Well, just like with anything, we have our hills, we have our valleys, but I will say that it's been an amazing journey. I think that it's all about who you become in the process. So I'm definitely a different Shonda than I was when I started in finance years ago. And it's about becoming who you are becoming. So,
Describe that to me. Like who do you feel you are now that's different?
Oh my gosh. Just the different things that are value to me. One of the biggest things I feel is that in this role, I am constantly learning and evolving. Because I have to read a lot, brush up on a lot. I feel like I'm way more informed about different things that are happening, not just in finance, but around the world. When it comes to different issues as well and how it impacts our households. I wasn't a parent at that time, so now I have even more of a viewpoint of what it's like to be a parent, what it's like to be a wife, because I've gotten married in that time as well. So it's just completely different, but constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly learning, and reflecting, because I think that's a big part about us as people. If we can reflect on, what's happened, why it's happened, how it's happened, then we're able to make better decisions moving forward to get the results that we want.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. So, and all of that makes perfect sense to me. The sort of the evolution that you went through, and it probably makes you a better financial advisor to have all these categories that you have to consider. I know for myself, I'm 49 and I keep thinking now about retirement, something I kind of generally thought about in my 20s, like, yeah, I'll put $50 a week aside or something. Now I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I had put as much as I could humanly afford. because I want to retire someday. So I'm sure you deal with a lot of customers that have, those types of needs. And, I'm going to get to this, but I just want to mention it now. We'll get to it in a bit. But I would be very curious where our job and career trajectory platform with Boss Moves meets your financial planning expertise and how a person can navigate that. Because I think that would be really neat to kind of explore where those two intersect. And I know that they do. Um, in the meantime, I wanted to ask a little bit more about your feelings about hands being tied, because I think in a career journey, there's a lot of what I'll call them pressure points, messages in life to you that you need to make a change, whether it be your life, your career, or otherwise. We're here focusing on career, but we understand that career can be impacted by things outside of that. In this case, you're talking about something that happened inside your career. When I took the leap for Power 3, I had a pressure point of glass ceiling. So for me, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to get much further here. And I knew that I was ready for that. So I kind of segued. For you, that combination of outside forces and inside forces, um, how would you describe the process you went through, realizing that this wasn't this way that you thought you were always going to have a career and impact on people? How would you describe that process of discovering maybe this isn't my way?
Um, Again,
Sounds like I opened a can of worms.
yeah, it
Sorry.
was challenging. I think we all have this way we view our life and what we think it's going to be like, and when the dynamics start to shift and things don't necessarily go as planned, I don't think it's easy for anyone to accept. And I think for me, the biggest thing was being very strong in my beliefs, my morals, my values, and my worth. As a
Mhm.
teacher, I went above and beyond and made sure that the students that I taught knew that they were loved, they were cared for, and that I was there to help them get their education. As a result, I received very high rankings and very high, you know, what they do reviews and everything every year. And so I was a highly qualified teacher. And having that gave me confidence in knowing that I was always looking to improve. So that wasn't it. But it gave me confidence in knowing my worth and that I deserved to be in a space where I was valued, right? And that as much as
Mhm.
I put into the position, that it also poured back into me. And I didn't feel like I received that in my role as a teacher. The second thing was because of my morals, my values, and my beliefs. Again, I believe that I was there to be a part of the solution. And being in that role, when it started to make me feel like I was a part of the problem, it it conflicted
Mhm.
internally with my beliefs and my morals and my values. And above all, they come first. So I couldn't stay in a place where I felt my time was past. And although it wasn't an easy
Yeah.
transition, I think it would have been harder in the long run had I stayed there because I would have only caused myself more hurt and turmoil, and ultimately would have been a disservice for the students as my heart and mind would have no longer been there.
Right. I'm fascinated by that. What you said is very powerful. And, one of the things that I really try to instill in people is that confidence to know their values, their worth, and, and follow that. And it'll lead you and guide you to better career options and a better lifestyle around your career and a better sense of self. So, for example, when if you don't have that feeling, you're not going to go into your next job. You're not going to find the best job that you could, even with all your credentials. You're not going to find your best job or opportunity. But you're also potentially going to sell yourself short by staying somewhere that doesn't fulfill those things. And then it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy and hurt your confidence. And I think, that sort of knowing when to let go is probably something I've had to learn. I've sat there and said, okay, there's three things. If I could just solve these three things, it's sort of like the grieving process maybe of, bargaining and denial and all these things because, this was a passion, it was a career choice and giving it up. So I'm hearing that from you, that you had to really sit down and evaluate, what was I in this for? Does this meet my needs? And I know I'm worth more and I want to give more. And there's this other realm I can do this in. And I think that people who are at a crossroads, I know there's people who just stay put and just languish somewhere and it feels safe. And obviously, going to the financial advisor realm, probably, I mean, you had that layer of overlap and, getting your certifications while you're getting your master's, which applause to you because that's not easy to do all of that. But then having that segue into your new career choice and, now here you are doing this full time, that takes a certain amount of courage and knowing your self-worth and wanting to sort of demand that your life bring you that. And does that sound accurate for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have doubts and times where we're like, oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? But I think ultimately one of the biggest factors is letting go of what was, as well as being okay with being at a disagreement with a lot of people. There are people, I think for many people, the approval of others is what they seek above all. And unfortunately, when you make a shift, especially in a career, when again, I dedicated 8-10 years of my life going to school to be a teacher. So imagine the things I heard from other people when I told them I was leaving something that I had gone to school for. Most of them weren't supportive. Most of them thought I was crazy.
Interesting.
Like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? I mean, you've been doing this and you are good at it and you got all this student loan debt. I mean, I could go on and on. People weren't very supportive. And to prevent that, many people stay put. So they're satisfying the needs of everyone else. Meanwhile, they're dying inside.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting thing, that outside pressure. I had kind of an opposite experience when I started my business. I remember sitting down, I had lunch with my parents, and I was sort of telling them like what was going on. And they were like, take the leap, do it, And I was like, really? I was kind of surprised because they had been very steady employees for many years of my youth. And later in their career towards retirement, they both became consultants, like independent consultants. But that was after they were more like stable financially. They didn't need the income as much as they used to. Much later in their careers. Now they're fully retired and everything. But so for me to have that support, and same day I went and met with, I have a twin sister, and we met, and I told her my worries and fears about taking this leap. And she said, Jenny, you've got to quit. You've got to just rip the Band-Aid off. And we were at Mod Pizza. We high-fived over it. And I went in on Monday and I said, I quit.
Oh,
and I gave 2 weeks notice. And, it's funny because to hear you have people kind of pressuring you the opposite must have really felt scary. You're already taking a big leap and you're investing in yourself and your future in a way that you can envision. And, maybe no one else had taken that journey with you quite the same way. But to have that courage in spite of that, I think is really commendable. And what do they say now?
Well, it took a while,
Yeah.
I think that people ultimately, when they are, especially if they're close to you, maybe they're your family or your close friends, they're not trying to discourage you. What they're trying to do is protect you. And I do a podcast myself. It's called Finance Unfiltered, and today we were talking about um, money mindset and how upbringing and environment can really influence the way that you think about money. And unfortunately, in the environment that I was reared in, and many of the people that I have in my circle, it is unfortunately a poverty mindset where you are really just taught one way of making money. No one ventures out and into the other ways that there are to make money. And so what they're telling you is to actually keep you safe. They don't want to see you
Mhm.
get hurt. They don't want to see you disappointed. They don't want to see you, in a state of confusion. So they're trying to protect you. And they don't realize that they're discouraging you at the same time. That's not their
Mhm.
intent, but that's what potentially can happen. And
Yeah,
thankfully, I was able to, again with the amazing God we serve, I was able, in having the great support of my husband and immediate family, I was able to still make that leap in spite of.
that's great. That's really wonderful. I think you mentioned that feeling that safety, and security, and I do think that there's something to be said for just having a stable, reliable, job that's never going to go away. There's always going to be a need for teachers and a paycheck, and presumably, if you wanted to at any time in the future, you could go back to it. Um, but I definitely think that for some, that leap is not for everyone. That stable, reliable paycheck is definitely something that um, it's hard to walk away from. It's hard to. And then you probably have, I know for myself with my business, I've had my ups and downs in my journey to figuring out how to remain stable. And, I'm a single parent, so I have that factor. I don't have any other income. So it's like do or die. And so I do. And there's grant involved in that. But with that has come a stronger belief in my capabilities. So I'm imagining for you, that's sort of where you know, um, have taken this journey that you feel that much more confident in your capabilities. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And just learning, as you get into different things, and again becoming and learning, I, it gives me some security and safety because I also just understand business now in general. And the fact that even though when you're in an employee quadrant, you don't have to create the work, you just kind of process the work.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things in that quadrant that are out of your control. And as a result, that can also make you very vulnerable. So even though we find having a job very safe and secure, I see the other side of the coin as well, where you also can be very vulnerable. And
Yeah,
because, being in that position, you have no control over your pay or your schedule, or even whether or not you'll be right size or left size or laid off, or we've even seen it recently with the government shutdown and things like that. So,
true.
those things, now that I'm at more aware, because I wasn't as aware, but now that I'm more aware, I see both sides of the coin. And I do understand if that's where you want to be, because everyone has a choice that they can make. But one of the things I talk to people about is just maybe not having all of your eggs in one basket, and being able to make money a variety of ways. I still keep my teaching degrees active. Why? Because there may come a time where, plus I work so hard for them. Okay, Jenny. So,
I
but
get it. Yeah,
there may be a time where I don't know where life may lead me, that I may need to return to working as a teacher. And
yeah.
so I'm not going to completely, shut it out and close that door. I do keep those licenses active for that reason. But, I also understand now that there are other ways to create a lifestyle and to earn income.
Just for the sake of somebody watching, you went into this financial advisor realm, and it's primarily based on licenses and certifications and education that you do directly in that professional licensing realm. Do you have to have a college degree to go there?
Well, if you did, I wouldn't be here because my degrees are in education. So I don't
Right.
have any degrees, any advanced degrees in finance. But if you actually just do any research on the top industries and the top pay, what you'll find is that many of them, although we like to think so, they don't require college degrees. Right. So
Hmm.
you look at finance being one of them. Finance is a big industry that requires you to get a lot of certifications and licenses, but not necessarily degrees. Now, are there people who have degrees in finance? Absolutely. But you don't have to have a degree in order to earn a lot of income. Technology is another one where people might go to, trade schools or things like that, get certifications to learn different trades when it comes to technology. And so you have that one. There's a lot of business ownership is another one. You don't have to have a degree to own a business. So there are
Right.
different industries where certifications, licensing, coursework can get you in the door and you can use that and continue to progress. So no, you don't need a degree. I mean, I would assume that if you had one, you would have been in a better position initially than I was, where I had to learn everything from scratch. But you don't have to.
And I wanted to showcase that because I think that, one of the purposes that I have is really showing people a path forward, and they don't need to be scared of pursuing a career if they don't have a college degree. And I think that's a common misperception. And early on, like a few minutes ago, you mentioned student loans. And, I think that's a big question mark now that people are having of, wait a minute, I had somebody say the other day, they said, if I'm going to spend $200,000 on my kids' education, could I just like buy them a house and get them started in life a different way? And I'm like, absolutely, you could. And parents who are disappointed if their kids don't go to college and putting pressure on them, like this is the only path forward. And I feel like if I could, reach out to everybody who never went to college and say, there's a possibility here. There's a path forward. Now I have a master's degree too. So I'm like, now looking back, maybe I could have done something different. I kind of forced my way through school with a lack of imagination for what was possible and really no vision of what I want. I didn't even have the passion of wanting to be like a teacher or anything. I was like, what's the easiest degree? It really was that. I did start off with a passion for genetics. Turns out I didn't want to try hard enough to pass chemistry. So that was that sort of pressure moment where it redirected me. But so for you to share that, it's not that you don't have to have skills. It's not that there's not rigorous demands for the licenses that you've obtained and the experience that you have. It's that there's a path forward for someone who doesn't have a degree who wants to put the time and effort in to become successful in that arena. Is that
Absolutely.
basically it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You do not have to have a degree. Most of the people that work with me don't have any degrees in finance and come from various backgrounds, from engineers to doctors to laborers, restaurant,
That's interesting.
hospitality industry. So you don't have to have a degree, just a desire really
Yeah.
and for wanting to help other people.
Now, for pay structure with that, is it fully commissioned? Is it partially commissioned? How does that work?
Well, my pay is going to be, I get paid various ways, but they're all based upon, well, not all, but many of them are based upon the effort that I put forth. So we do get paid when we help a person with a particular service. In the investment arena, there's also residual and passive forms of income as well. Through partnering with other financial firms and other companies, we also are able to earn referral fees and sometimes equity, stock awards, bonuses, things like that are also provided. So, there's various ways of getting paid. Each firm, each business is a little different. So, but yeah, you can get paid a lot
And
of ways.
for you, you're pursuing a lot of your business directly, correct? Like you seek referrals and clients and things like that to work with.
Absolutely. And also we have other consultants that we train and work with, similar to a
Okay.
real estate brokerage.
Okay. Very cool. So, I just want to understand how that was structured. I guess now one thing I sort of mentioned earlier was, um, because you're a financial advisor, I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction than just your career. you have a client base, and you probably have people in all different kinds of positions of financial status. And if you were to describe, you know, somebody who seemingly was in what, how do I put this? Someone who may not have been well positioned financially, someone who maybe wasn't earning a lot, maybe was in debt, maybe had all these decisions to make with their finances. Can you describe a client that you've helped and what you had to do to help them get their path forward, and what kind of careers they were in, if you happen to know anything like that you can share without giving the personal details?
Absolutely. You talking about me? I can talk about myself.
You can about yourself or with
Yeah.
anybody.
So, when I first started in finance, I was a mess. I didn't understand money, and no one had ever taught me anything about money. And going to school, getting 2 degrees, that didn't teach me anything about money. It taught me how to teach kids, right? So I didn't learn about money in my household, unfortunately, and I don't blame my parents, because your parents can't teach you something they don't know themselves. And so it can become a generational thing. So I didn't learn about money in my household, didn't learn about money at school. And here I am in adulthood, making adult decisions with absolutely little to no financial literacy. So I'm speaking for myself. Debt, could get into it, could not figure out how to get out of it. Budget, what's that? Why are you cursing at me? I don't budget. Right? Investing. I remember choosing my retirement account by asking someone else what they chose. Like I'm looking at the paper, I don't understand it, and I look at the person next to me and say, "Hey, what did you put for this?"
Mm-hmm.
So I had no idea how to really manage money. So I got into finance because of that. So the first thing I would encourage anyone is to seek help. In my community,
And this is any income amount. We're not talking, you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. We're talking an auto shop mechanic,
we're
right?
talking anybody. We're talking anybody, because the first step is desire. You have to have the desire to want to improve your finances before anyone else can help you, or before they'll improve. So I had the desire. And so what I did was I sought out how to fix it. Right? And seeking that out, it was really simple. And the first step being that I needed to get some education about money. I needed to learn. And unfortunately, I find that sometimes in many communities, especially in my experience in the Black community, we are actually taught the opposite about talking to people about money. In my household growing up, I was taught things like money doesn't grow on trees. What goes on in this house stays in this house. And as a result, corporate America also teaches you not to talk about money, because they tell you you can't talk about your salary with this person or that person. And so many people grow up with this stigma about talking about money. And so they never reach out to talk to anybody about it outside of people maybe in their immediate circle. Because they don't want to be judged, or maybe they're embarrassed or whatever. And it keeps you there. It keeps you there because you never talk about it. So I would say, regardless of where you are, financial professionals, myself, any financial professional isn't there to make judgment calls, right? We're there to really help you to understand what it is that you have going on and help you figure out a path or a plan to get out of it. The second thing that I would encourage the person to do is to really take a look at where you are. Many of us are walking around with our head in the clouds, debt high, income low, splurging, you only live once, vacation, all of these things, and don't even want to look.
And I think for debt, I don't think people realize how much money they're spending month to month just to keep that debt, and I know people who are spending $2,000 a month just on interest. And it's like, if you could get in front of that, you'd get $2,000 back in your pocket every month. So it's interesting. You mentioned something about the salary thing. I want to bring that up because it's very relevant. They have recently enacted some laws to protect employees who do talk about their salary, but even with those laws, my nephew was reprimanded because he and one of his coworkers had a conversation about money, and it's like there's a law for that now. And they're not even supposed to retaliate against you for
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, but it's still such a sort of cultural expectation in with work environments, and even people who run the managers and stuff, they don't know. But part of that transparency has been because of disparity in pay, and people not realizing their worth, in actual dollars. It's one thing to know your internal worth, it's another thing, well, how much am I worth on paper?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes me sad when I see somebody who I know is worth more not realizing it, that you can research those things and you can ask for more and you can request the pay ranges for that job, and advocate for yourself and negotiate salaries and things like that. And I don't know if you get involved in that as much on your financial advising, but there's obviously two trains of thought: managing the money you have coming in and trying to get more money coming in. And like you said, some people put all their eggs in one basket. Maybe there's ways for them to earn money in other ways. So there's a lot of different ways to look at, financial well-being. And one of them is money coming in. And where we come in on the Boss Moves platform is really pursuing and knowing your worth monetarily, pay wise, and your rights to talk about it, to you know, um, it becomes a tool to evolve yourself and build your career. And people talking about their opportunities kind of keeps employers at bay from taking advantage of people who don't know their worth. So I think that that's interesting that you came from that sort of background of mindset where we don't talk about those things and stuff like that. And there's actually, it's funny, there's a new law that just came out a few months ago where you have to, in Maryland, excuse me, Maryland and a couple other states have it, where not only do you have to allow people to talk about it and you have to provide it if someone requests it when they're job interviewing, but now you actually have to publish it on all Maryland-based jobs, what the salary range is, and it has to be a good faith range. And you can go through and see a lot more posted, but you still see a lot not posted because employers don't really want to do it. Because they don't want to give away they've been holding their cards to their chest here on what they're willing to pay. And they don't want to give that away because if they can get away with paying someone less, So those are things when you're talking about this, I'm hearing, and I think that transparency in career helps you grow your career. And I think that transparency in your personal finances can help you address your problems. It's like head and sand versus putting a spotlight on it. Now, so when you use yourself as an example, when you really put that spotlight on it, what things have you changed since then about about
Everything.
everything? Okay.
Everything. One of the biggest things that I learned to do was cash flow planning, budgeting, looking at your money, looking at, where is it supposed to go, learning how to spend at that time, because I no longer have a paycheck, but learning how to spend your paycheck the same way each and every time that you get it. Paying yourself first. Most people are taught to save after, right? So you pay your bills, you pay this, you pay everybody else, and then you look at the little bit that you have left after you pay everything, and then you're like, okay, I can save $50, right? And if you do that your entire life, how much money will you really have when it's time for you to need it? So you have to put yourself at the front of the line, because otherwise you'll never have the money you need to be able to sustain yourself at the point in life where you no longer want to or can no longer have the ability to continue to work. So paying yourself first, budgeting your money, investing money, I could go on, but it's a complete change from what it is that I used to do. And it came from seeking out assistance and talking to someone about it.
Yeah. I can really appreciate that. I think, and this is where uh, I think because I'm 49, I've had my trajectory of my income go up and up over the years. When I was young, I had less bills. I had no mouths to feed but my own, really. And I didn't think about my future. I'm not a debt person. I haven't ever really carried debt. I think I had a credit card debt for $800 once when I was like 18 years old, and I was like, never again. I never. And now $800 isn't a big deal, but back then I was sobbing. So I'm very careful about that. But having that trajectory of, you know, life happens and you have more responsibilities, more mouths to feed. Maybe you want a bigger house and a new car. Eventually your old car is going to die. Having the preparation for all of that, and if you're and where I'm at with the boss moves thing is your career needs to grow with that. If you can make that happen, if you can put pressure on that and build your worth and build your value and know what that looks like. And from your perspective, you kind of did that with your own career where you took control of what you wanted out of your career and what your worth was for you and the impact you want to have. And I think that is huge. And I hope that it inspires somebody. I actually have a friend right now as a teacher who is trying to make that shift herself. And I think it's the confidence and believing in yourself, investing in yourself. So if there was one thing with how your financial advice relates to somebody's career choices that you could say that would help somebody trying to make a tough decision like you did, what would that be?
I would say save your money. In order to feel comfortable making any sort of transition, you're not going to feel comfortable if you feel like you're financially unsure. And having money saved will help you make the transition a lot easier because you do understand that there's going to be a learning curve. In the beginning, there may be times where money may be inconsistent. You're still learning. Things are going to come up as they do anyway because it's life. So having some money saved will be very helpful when you're making the transition because you'll have something to fall back on in the event that things don't go as planned or something comes up. So the more money you can stack now before you make the transition, the better and smoother your transition will be.
And even if you have debts, you would recommend building that stash. Like if you have credit card debts and you want to can you do that with debt and put more in savings and pay less debt and still make that transition? Or do you not recommend trying to pay down the debt first?
So there's this big elephant in the room when it comes to debt, and ultimately everyone has their own decision to make. But what I share with people is, think about it this way. Many people focus heavily on getting out of their debt. And I'm not saying that that's not a good way to do it. But if you focus really heavily on getting out of debt, you're not really focusing much on investing, or if you are, you're putting it into qualified accounts like your retirement or your 401k, but you're not really building a huge emergency fund. And in the process of doing all of this, an emergency comes up. So now you have this big emergency. Do emergencies ever come up, Jenny? I mean, right? So now in the process, you had this huge emergency, but now you've been so focused on paying off the debts, you don't have the money. So you're going to do one of two things in that situation. You're going to pull from your retirement savings, which is going to penalize you, and you're going to have to pay taxes. So now you're getting hit by taking money out, or you're going to pick up those cards that you were focusing so heavily on paying off. So not having the savings is going to have you either pull from your financial future or go back into debt. So it's vital that you have it, because if you don't, it's not going to do anything but delay your plans for your future or delay you paying off the debts.
I think that's excellent advice, and I love it. And I think, and I know people in that situation who are so busy paying off their debts that they're not saving anything, and then they're reusing their credit cards. So I think that's really meaningful advice. And I think anyone who's looking to go from a stable job to a more, a job with more potential, but also more potential, like,
Risk, absolutely.
risk. Yeah. I think that building that cushion is a kind of a really wise way to do it, even if you still maintain some of the debt, during that transition. Um, so we're kind of leading to the end of our time. If there was a few things that you would say to somebody who's in high school, who is starting to think, what do I want to be when I grow up? What am I going to go to college for? What would you say to them?
I would definitely say to weigh your options. College has its place. I had fun at college. I learned a lot in college. But I would stress to you, it just depends. Working in finance now and looking at my own trajectory, I honestly do not feel like if you have to take out loans to go to college, that maybe you should look into other careers. Just
Mhm.
because there's so many careers you can go into without starting your life with a bunch of debt. If you have the opportunity to go to college for little to no of your own money, or you have, college savings or money saved up for you, I would definitely say to take advantage of that opportunity. But if you do not, I would recommend that you look at your options. What are some things that you can do to earn income and have a fulfilling career without maybe starting your adult life with that sort of debt? So I just recommend that you weigh your options, look at where it's going to end up. So you have a lot of people that go to college and can't even find a job in their field, right? So now
Yeah,
they're in a bunch of
it's
debt
true.
and don't even have the career to go along with it.
Or they
So,
have the degree and discover they don't want to do that
or they
career
don't
field.
like it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I would just say weigh your options, look at everything. There's no one side to the picture. Look at both sides of the coin before making the decision as to what you'd like to do moving forward.
yeah. Excuse me. And I think people don't realize you can work your way through school. It could take you 10 years if you really want to do it. And some
Absolutely.
places, like I got my master's degree for free because my employer paid for it. Now, yes, I had my
Mhm.
bachelor's, but there's a lot of companies you get in on a lower level, they might pay for your degree. So there's so many options like that that I think people don't always know exist. That's part of what I want to do is educate people on their path. Question. If there was somebody watching this today that was interested in learning about financial advising, would you be open to speaking to them? And, we obviously will be providing your information when we post this. Uh, what would you have to say to someone who might be interested in having that conversation?
I would say feel free to reach out to me. You can always find me on Facebook or Instagram under Shonda. My first name is great. You can feel free to check out my website at pandafg.com. But there are so many resources that you can use to find information out on financial positions and financial advising. You do not have to go to school. Companies will sponsor you a lot of times in order to get your certifications and licenses. So I would just say, to do a little bit of legwork, a little bit of homework, find out what it is that you are looking for, whether it's flexibility, whether it's, a salary, a certain salary, is it remote work? Is it, and just find what is going to suit you and your life and your needs.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Thank you for
And
having me.
I look forward to hearing how it goes in the future. I'm going to go ahead and,
Absolutely.
yep.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to go ahead and end the recording. Hold on.